This is Wildcat Dojo Conversations.
Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Wildcat Dojo Conversations. I'm Sensei Michelle, your host, and today I'm sitting with Sensei Jackie, my friend, fact checker, and black belt in her own right, and my nephew, Randy, who is on his way to becoming a black belt in the very near future, just in case this is late 2019. Also, I consider you, even though you're a family member, a good friend.
Yes.
So we'll all check in and say hi. Start me out, Rand.
Hi, I'm Randy.
Hey everybody, nice to see you today.
Our topic today is my absolutely favorite thing in karate, self-control. A little background. When I joined karate, the term I was taught was self-discipline. I had to change it because whenever I used the word discipline with my children, they always connotated it to getting in trouble. Even though I would try to explain to them self-discipline is just self-control. I couldn't get them past the fact that somehow this had to be a bad thing because the word discipline was involved and they had always been taught if they were being disciplined, something bad was happening. So because I used self-control so much over the years, I've really let self-discipline go. Did you even remember that we used to use that word?
The other day I remembered that we used to say karate was based on courtesy and discipline, and I thought, wow, we have certainly changed and modernized.
Verbiage,
yes.
I don't remember using discipline at all.
See? So it used to be self-discipline, and I still have one of my little flashcards, and if you've ever been in a dojo with me, you know I have everything on flashcards.
Yeah.
Kids love something they can touch and see. And it would say self-discipline is self-control, which means at that time I said being my own policeman. But now I just say stopping yourself from doing something that's going to get you in trouble, but also being courageous enough to do the thing that is scary, but that you really want to do. And that is why it is my favorite thing. Self-control has such a bad rap. Everybody always thinks of it as just as that negative of stopping yourself. But it also has that unbelievably positive characteristic. I want to add here that I work on self-control all the time. I think as a martial artist, if I stop working, I start to atrophy. And whatever that trait is, whether it's physicality, whether it's memory, whether it's courtesy, or whether it's like it is in this case, thinking before the thing happens, organizing as best as possible when possible, and then coming to the thing prepared to adapt to the situation. And that, to me, is what self-control really is. Who would have thunk that it was so many things, right? Right. I know. It makes you think, right?
Yeah, because I was thinking how complex it was on the way here.
Yes.
Like, it's not one thing.
No, it's intertwined into everything.
It isn't just stopping yourself from doing something, although sometimes it is that simple.
No, and when I always think of, this is how basic my life is, when I always think of stopping myself from doing something, I always think of stopping myself from eating the extra cookies.
And that second piece of chocolate.
So self-control is one of the cornerstones of karate. So what you said earlier is true. How you said it was based on self-discipline and courtesy. The three cornerstones of the triangle that I consider karate are courtesy, self-control, and fighting spirit. And just a little addendum, fighting spirit is, of course, that ability to push on into the thing and not give up. Not fighting spirit as in, I'm an angry young man / woman, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yes.
I do love triangles. And I have done a little bit of research. I'll do a little bit more research before I go into any detail here. But from my standpoint, from my vantage point, a lot of things in karate are built on triangles. For example, another triangle is the foundation of karate is kata, sparring, and self-defense. Also a triangle. Now, it's true we do weapons and we do all kinds of agility and we do all kinds of physicality, but that foundation of kata, which we've already defined, sparring, a parent came to me last night and asked me what was kumite. Of course, it's sparring in Japanese. And self-defense is just another example of the triangle. Here's a random list of things that make me respect, admire, want to have, and want to share my love of self-control. I tell the little 4-year-old children that I teach that if they can learn to control themselves, then other people won't constantly step in and control them. That works for all of us of all ages. If we can learn a little bit to, again, do that thing that is a little hard, whether it's mow the lawn that day or in my case, shut up. As well as stopping yourself, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think the self-control, you also control your environment. If you have enough self-control, you control that environment so you can control the negativity.
That's exactly
Oh,
where
am
I'm
I
going
skipping
with.
ahead?
No, you're perfect. Your timing's perfect, because that same self-control that stops you from doing something that you're going to get in trouble for, the example I wrote here was cursing. That's the exact same self-control that wills you to take that wonderful, scary chance, be it take a new job, try out for a sports team, or ask somebody on a date. It is two-sided. It's a two-sided example of exactly the same skill, and its origin is your chi pocket, which we should put that word on our list, but because we will talk about chi in almost every episode. Yeah. Once you realize this, it does feel like a magic power right inside your own body, and I agree with you. And I'll get back to this in a minute. It's from your fingertips back. Chi is also called ki, and it's also called prana. And it was also called the Force in the Star Wars movie, so people know a lot about it. And it's also the will to act, and it's also patience. That's a lot of information right there, isn't it? Yeah. And it's located in the lower part of your belly, so if you sit up tall instead of slouching over and you take that breath and you draw it down into your belly, which I know we talked about in the first podcast, you get that breath down into your lower belly. Whenever I'm in a situation where I have anxiety, where I feel an anxiousness, the first thing I do is drop that air down into my chi pocket in that calming experience, like you were saying, in a negative situation. That calmness and that centering allows you to make the choice that changes your reality, maybe not the people around you, because if they don't want to stop being negative, you can't make them.
In some instances, I think with that self-control, you can redirect them, because the more self-control you have, the more you can control the situation, because you're aware of yourself. The more you're aware of what you're feeling, you can, like, if somebody's like complain, and you can be like, I'm not going to interrupt him, let him get this out. And then you add, like, maybe a funny tidbit and like redirect the energy. But you have that self-control to not be like, yeah, and then this happened to me. Exactly,
not carrying on with it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if it was like 10 years ago when you and I did the thing where every time we went into a store where the salesperson who was checking you out was grumpy.
Yes.
We would measure how long it took us to turn their mood around. That's what Jackie and I did
today,
an experiment.
Too. Did that today. Did
it's 7-Eleven a fun on the way here. And it's a really good use of the skills because it hones your skills. And it makes somebody's day a little better, too. There's a great chapter in my self-defense book about chi. And it's about how to build chi. So if you want to look up my self-defense book on Amazon, the spelling of my last name, in case you don't know this, is D as in David, A-R, B as in boy, R-O. Look me up on Amazon, Michelle Darbrow. And my self-defense book is called Self-Defense: A Common Sense Approach.
Yes.
And the whole last chapter is dedicated to how to build your chi. And I think that's one of the best parts of that book, because that's one of the things they don't talk about in women's self-defense, is how to make yourself act when you're going, holy cow, because things went so poorly.
Well, and how to react in a situation where you don't know how you're going to react. You might just shut down. You don't know.
Well, that's a podcast, because I like to play what-if games.
Ooh.
And therefore you're more prepared for that situation. Actually, we talk about that a lot in the dojo, is how you should play what if this happens, what if that happens, so you're more prepared for those situations.
Which is kind of part of self-control. Like, you got to think, how is my brain going to react? I don't know, but let me try to think how I would think.
Well, what the chi line can do is, this is what I think. I think of my brain as an unruly toddler. It's got a lot of intelligence, but it actually flits from thing to thing with you can't even see how it's segued. And then I think of my heart as this gigantic emotional thing. And by emotions, I don't just mean, love and crying. Also, anger is a huge emotion, and it's a huge distraction for getting things done. So the chi is the referee. It brings them back on the team and gets the job done. Without the chi, they have no referee, so they have no way to push on. They just randomly live in there battling each other. Like an old episode of Mork and Mindy, when Mork realized he had emotions. You should look that one up on YouTube, right?
I haven't seen Mork and Mindy. I've seen maybe an episode.
Anyway, yeah, I'm really dating myself there, but there's probably a more modern one that does it. I don't have any recollection of it, though. You'll let me know. And you know what? You listeners can let me know.
They've done it in Star Trek: The Next Generation with Data, because he found emotions.
That's right.
But that's also kind of dated at this point, too.
But everybody still watches Star Trek who loves
Yeah,
it.
because it's still on Netflix.
When I realized that summoning power from the inside to act, to take an action, or to take no action, when all that lived inside of me at all times, I really jumped at the chance to play with it, to tap it, to understand it, and through trial and error, to become better at feeling more in control of the little bit of space that is under my control. And that space, if you stretch your hands out in front of you like you're Frankenstein's monster, isn't this how he holds his arms? From your fingertips back, that's the space that you control. From my fingertips out to where Sensei Jackie's sitting, I have absolutely no control over that. And that is something that really, really makes a difference. And so that experiment that I took hold of, and this was decades ago, literally, don't you think, Jack?
I think so.
Yeah. Like before the new millennium,
Yes.
I was on a quest to understand this for myself and to really take hold of it and to really try to change my environment, like you were saying, Randy, by changing just me. And understanding that self-control isn't just about denying myself, but it's also, I don't know if I want this word, liberating.
Yes.
A part of me, letting it come out and do things and be things that it might be too shy or too fearful to do.
Another more simpler word could be reward.
Yeah, I
It's
like
a
that
simple
word.
reward of like, you controlled yourself. You denied yourself this, but you go out and do it at a separate place, and that's where it's better.
I would agree with that.
Yes.
Going back to how you work on your chi real quick, obviously the first thing is to breathe down into your chi pocket and therefore kind of wake it up. What do you think of that? Because maybe of the distractions of life and the busyness and the slouching, it became kind of dormant in that moment. And so you want to bring it back to life. Hopefully you keep your chi pocket at all times engaged, but let's be realistic. That may or may not always happen, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
By breathing in, it gives you that split second that you can think, is there action here or is no action better? You know when I use that a lot? When people say something sarcastic to me. When people say something sarcastic to me, I always take a beat. Well, I shouldn't use the words always and never, so I'll go always except for that one time I forget and then there's a little problem. In made up percentage, 97% of the cases. I remember to take that breath before the action, and then I can either just ignore it or kind of redirect it like you were talking about and like we do to small children, or just laugh it off.
Well, I have the opposite thing with sarcasm. I find myself being like, no, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to bite my tongue, save it for later, say it to a friend,
But what I'm
say it out loud.
But what I'm saying here is, if the person's being sarcastic to you and you take a minute rather than just having an instant knee-jerk reaction, if it's only a thought, it's not as powerful as if it comes from your chi pocket. If you take that breath and you engage your chi pocket, then you didn't default to the easier thing so as not to make a fight. You chose an action of no action, which is a real karate thing. That's a real karate saying. I think that's the way I want to say it. Action of no action.
Yeah.
Write that one down and we'll look it up and see if I have a better way to say that,
I'm
okay?
pretty sure that's an actual saying everywhere.
The big exception here is when you're blindsided and your life is threatened. There's no thinking time there. By the time you're deep into saving your own life, you hopefully engaged your chi pocket for strength and for perseverance. But at that point, it's seriously physical, and it's not a mind game in any sense of the word. So your self-control does come into play because you want to push all the distractions out of your head and stay focused on the act of saving your own life.
Yeah.
And therefore you want all the time your chi pocket to be involved. You want it to be your habit that every single time there's any kind of a situation, be it benign or seriously aggressive, you engage your chi pocket by breathing down into it. But in that situation, you don't have that extra second to think. In women's self-defense, I sometimes say if the confrontation is in front of you and not behind you, they didn't come up and grab you from the back, but they're standing in front of you and they're using intimidating language, you actually have a second. You actually could drop your air down into your belly, breathe, and do my favorite thing in the world. Try to, I want to say it in a way where I don't cuss, so out-talk them. How's that? Some of the ones Jackie and I have used in the past are, does your mother know where you're at? Or haven't we met before? So I'm going to say this a second time because I think it's important. When somebody is taunting you, and that does happen, there's a lot of bullies out there. Even in adult world, the teenagers don't believe that people try to bully us. They're trying to get a reaction, an external reaction on an ego-based level. The chi line will inform me just to smile through the situation, pat it on the head, and send it off to bed. Don't engage it because it's not worth my power line. And that is a hard lesson because the ego always wants to jump in and play to show the other person who you probably don't even know that well. If you knew them that well, they wouldn't be like that.
Goading you.
Yeah, exactly. So by engaging that chi line, you give yourself the opportunity to treat it like what it is. And in what that is completely unimportant. And that same line, that same chi line, in a true emergency, steps forward and gives you the strength and the courage to do what it takes. And that doesn't just mean the physical fight emergency. It could be anything. A fire. We have a lot of emergencies in the world these days, right?
Too many.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think so far?
I think that if I could have any superpower, I would take the superpower of self-control. Because I would be able to do well in any situation into which I was thrown.
Well, see, you do have that, so you're lucky. Well, we're not going to talk about fake superpowers because we'll be here all day going, oh, I want this one, I want this one. Oh, that's a good one. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Any last words on this subject, Rand?
I mean, when I was told I was doing the podcast, I just tried to think about when I do self-control, which is constant. It's constant.
Yeah.
All day at work, driving home, going into a store, everywhere I go, I got to use some form of self-control.
You know, one we didn't bring up that I love and have worked on again for decades is tone of voice.
Oh, yeah.
Will you make a note for me? And we'll do that as a separate thing because that we can make that into a short one day. Because I don't think it'll fill a 15 or 20 minutes. But boy, there's a lot there, isn't there? Because you use that during the day.
Tone of voice and just body language of
and
posturing.
Body
because
posture.
if you come at somebody aggressive, they're gonna come at you aggressive. So you got to come at soft.
That's right.
Even if they're doing something that's just driving you up a wall, grabbing all over you, you just got to be like, come on, man, can we just stop?
Probably good to note here that Randy works with special needs, so sometimes they are a little more touchy than they'd get away with in regular public school.
Much more touchy.
But that reminds me of one of the things that Master Collegian used to say all the time, which is soft overcomes hard.
And it does.
And people would always question him like, that doesn't make any sense. And he would always use the example of water on a rock. You don't see it, but the Grand Canyon is there. So it's a really, really cool thing to take note of. Again, we'll come back to that. But I do appreciate both of your time. I really do. And I want to remind people of how to get in touch with us. I wonder if today, instead of saying how to get in touch with us, because I've said it a few times already, I'll say, why don't you check out our YouTube page? It's called Wildcat Dojo. There's nothing on it right now except for those 3 kids songs, but they do relate completely to self-control, don't they? The 3 kids songs that I made. If you want to see me singing with some kids, you have to go on YouTube and / to Wildcat Dojo, and we're there for you. We hope to put some other stuff on eventually related to this podcast, but we don't have anything right now.
Not yet.
And I also want to say at the beginning of the podcast, when you hear that voice, that's Sensei Jay. So thank you, Sensei Jay, for that. Yeah. And that whoosh sound comes from Audio Jungle, just in case you were wondering. Thanks for tuning in. Get in touch with us any of the ways you want to. This is Sensei Michelle, signing off for today.
In today's episode, we used a phrase, action of no action. Upon checking this phrase, the actual phrase that runs through many, many philosophies and plays, as it turns out, Hamlet, is action in inaction.
Leave it to them to give us a tongue twister at the end of the day.
For
right?
sure.
Yeah, 3 times fast. In action.
Children. What this really means is to do nothing is not weak, as long as the decision to do nothing comes from your power line, your chi pocket.
Thanks. Thanks for doing that and for looking that up for me.
A pleasure.
Now I am going to say goodnight, Gracie.